Bella lay on one side beneath the half-rotted wooden stall, her bones pressing against the unforgiving concrete, the only cushion between her head and the world, a flattened nylon bag she'd found blowing across the road that morning, its edges stiff with dust. The street hummed with life just a few meters away, buses honking, hawkers yelling, music bleeding from a bar. But under this stall, time moved differently, like the city had forgotten her, tucked her beneath its chaos and walked away. Her eyes stayed open, scanning the sky through the slats of wood above. No stars, just thick clouds and the flickering bulb of a nearby signboard that buzzed like it might give out at any second. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and even then, it had only been a sachet of pure water and 2 crackers someone dropped at the park, her stomach twisted with hunger and something colder, shame. She thought of the hotel, the uniform she'd worn like a badge of pride, the scent of lemon polish on marble floors, until the day her supervisor pulled her aside, mouth tight with suspicion. "Bella, they found someone's phone in the laundry basket. We need to check your bag." And no matter how she protested, how she begged them to believe her, the accusation stuck and the job was gone. She'd gone to her brother next, heart pounding, only for him to open the door halfway and say, "Bella, you can't come here, not with my kids inside." Then shut it like she was nothing. She pressed her hands to her face, whispering, "This isn't who I was meant to be," then pushed herself up, legs shaky, drawn by the smell of jollof rice and fried plantain. She slipped behind the restaurant dumpster, reaching, and smacked into a man in a suit. Denzel, silent, watching, then offering her his untouched food tray without a word.
Bella stood across the road, half hidden behind a damful bus, her eyes fixed on the chaos unraveling in front of the luxury hotel entrance. Flash bulbs burst like fireworks as men in black suits held back a crowd of reporters, shouting questions. Microphones shot forward like weapons. In the middle of it all stood the man from the other night. Him. Same sharp jaw, same calm face. Only this time, he wasn't holding a food tray in a quiet alley. He was stepping out of a sleek black SUV, surrounded by assistants with tablets and earpieces. Bella's eyes widened. That was Denzel Okezie, the tech genius from all the talk shows, the one people called the silent billionaire.
She took a shaky breath, heart pounding. She'd eaten his food. She'd stared at him like a beggar. And now, here he was, polished and powerful. And she was still wearing the same faded jeans she'd slept in behind a stall. As if on cue, their eyes met through the blur of movement, his gaze cutting through the noise. She looked away immediately, heat crawling up her neck. A security guard spotted her near the curb, narrowed his eyes and walked toward her fast. "Hey you! This is private property! Move now!" He backed. She flinched, stepping back, hands raised. "I'm not doing anything."
The guard reached for her shoulder, but then Denzel's voice cut through the air, firm but quiet. "She's not a threat." The guard froze. Denzel's eyes softened as he looked at her again. "Don't disappear again." Bella's heart stuttered. Why would someone like him even notice me? The sun was unforgiving that afternoon, high and merciless above the Lagos skyline. And Bella's legs had started trembling long before she reached the 3rd bus stop. Her mouth was dry, her vision blurred, and each breath felt like dragging air through cloth. She hadn't eaten since the food Denzel gave her, and even that had been split into 2 meals.
The little water she managed to beg that morning had dried from her lips hours ago as she crossed the edge of a busy junction near Ikoyi. The noise around her, the honking, the shouting, the grinding engines faded into a distant hum. Her knees buckled, her arms gave out, and her body hit the pavement hard, the world tilting sideways as strangers moved around her like she was a sack of forgotten clothes. People glanced, some paused, but no one stopped until a sleek black car pulled to the side of the road and a door swung open. Moments later, she was lifted, not roughly, but with steady hands, and the next thing she saw was a ceiling she didn't recognize and a machine beeping softly beside her. White sheets, crisp air, a nurse adjusting her IV.
She didn't remember arriving, but the nurse said her bills had been settled, no questions asked. When she opened her eyes again, Denzel stood near the door, arms folded, face unreadable. He didn't smile, just told her she could rest for a few days. Bella felt the walls go up inside her, suspicion kicking in fast. Nothing in this world ever came for free, but she was weak and tired and had no better options. He offered her a quiet job in his home, in the staff quarters. Nothing glamorous, just sorting files in his digital archive. She agreed. He gave her space, but he kept watching, always from just far enough. Bella moved through the mansion like a shadow, quiet, careful, always aware of the weight of her presence. The staff quarters were neat, the meals consistent, the work simple. Yet she couldn't shake the sense that she didn't belong. Every time she passed a mirror, she looked away, unable to face the girl with tired eyes and skin dulled by street dust. When mealtimes came, she waited for others to eat first, always taking the smallest portions, eating quickly, as if afraid someone would change their mind and take it back. Voices that rose even in laughter made her flinch. Her body still trained by months of surviving outside, where kindness was unpredictable and safety even more so. But despite the fear, the walls she'd built, something in her refused to stay numb.
She became curious. Denzel's office was a quiet place, filled with files and glowing screens. And as she organized the folders he assigned her, she began reading names of startup companies, investor decks, technical jargon. At first, they confused her, but then they began to fascinate her. Slowly, she asked questions. How did this app work? Why were investors backing that project? At first, Denzel gave short answers, distracted, but soon he started watching her more closely, realizing how quick she was to connect dots. One afternoon, she shook her head and made a dry comment about how rich people assumed poor people were clueless, when in truth, they just didn't have Wi-Fi. He didn't laugh loudly, but something in his eyes shifted, like he saw her differently, and it made her heart ache a little. Not from fear, from possibility. Denzel rarely spoke about the past, not even to his closest associates. But one quiet evening, while reviewing files beside garden balcony, something in Bella's silence invited him to speak. The soft hum of the city buzzed beneath them, distant, almost comforting. He told her about the scholarship that took him abroad, the one he clutched like a lifeline, desperate to escape the weight of poverty back home. He had promised his mother he'd return rich, successful, able to care for her in ways she never imagined. But while he studied computer engineering under freezing Boston skies, she died of an illness in their cramped two-room apartment, alone, with unpaid hospital bills and neighbors too scared to help. The guilt never left him. Bella listened without interrupting, hands folded tightly on her lap, her breath held, like if she exhaled too loudly, the truth might vanish. Then she spoke, voice low, raw, about how her own life hadn't crumbled in a single moment, but in quiet, cruel stages. First, her father's accident, then her mother's stroke, the relatives who promised to help but drifted, the job she fought to keep until a false accusation tore her dignity away. Each loss chipped her down until there was nothing left to give but her silence. They sat there, not looking at each other, bonded not by shared circumstances, but by the same ache, being powerless when it mattered most. That night, Bella thought everyone had gone to bed, so she slipped into the hallway and wept against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, unable to hold it in any longer.
When she looked up, Denzel stood in the shadows, watching, not with pity, but understanding. She wiped her face, whispered an apology, but he stepped closer and said she didn't have to hide the parts that hurt. The storm broke in the middle of a Tuesday, not from the sky, but from a blog headline that spread like wildfire across phones, timelines, and gossip circles. Denzel Okezie houses ex-beggar as secret mistress. Blinked in bold across news feeds, complete with a blurry photo of Bella stepping into the side entrance of his home. Her face half turned, caught between anonymity and exposure. By noon,
The story had gone viral.
Comments poured in. Vicious, mocking, unforgiving. Former co-workers from the hotel chimed in with snide remarks and screenshots from her past, painting her as a gold digger, an opportunist, a street girl who climbed into wealth on her back. Bella sat frozen in the staff quarters, phone trembling in her hand, heart twisting with shame. Everything she had tried to bury had been dragged into the light. No one saw the truth, only the scandal. By evening, she began packing silently, folding her few clothes into a small duffel bag, eyes blank, movements automatic. She couldn't look anyone in the face, not even the maid who offered her water with a worried glance.
Just as she reached for the door, a shadow filled the doorway. Denzel, his face unreadable, but his voice steady, like steel wrapped in heat. She froze, expecting rejection or anger, but instead heard something that made her heart crack wide open. His words weren't cold. They were fierce, deliberate, almost broken. Then he stepped forward, closed the space between them, and kissed her, gently, like he was afraid she'd shatter. And maybe, deep down, so was she. Bella started walking differently, not because anyone taught her how, but because something inside her began to shift. She no longer hid behind oversized scarves or avoided eye contact. Her curls, once always tied back or buried beneath caps, now bounced freely as she moved through the corridors of Denzel's company. She spoke during meetings, not loudly but clearly, and when she did, people listened. She started a blog at night, writing quietly under a lamp, pouring her story into posts meant for women who'd felt discarded, unseen, forgotten. She called it Ashes to Light, and within weeks, comments began trickling in, voices from all corners of the country thanking her for her raw honesty. Then, the invitation came. Denzel told her she'd be attending the biggest tech gala of the year, not as staff, not as a guest tucked in the background, but as his date. Panic gripped her at first, but he simply handed her a gown and waited. When she walked into the ballroom beside him, cameras flashed so fast she nearly stumbled. But she kept her chin up, her shoulders back. The whispers were there, thick as perfume in the air, but she didn't shrink. The media swarmed. One reporter leaned in, microphone tilted, asking if she felt lucky to be where she was. Bella smiled, not with arrogance, but with calm fire, and answered in a voice that carried across the noise. Not lucky, just seen. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like someone's secret. She felt real. Bella found herself drawn to a small shelter on the mainland, tucked between run-down buildings and broken dreams, where young girls slept in rows on thin mats, their eyes carrying the same fear and hunger she once knew too well. At first, she just listened, letting them talk, sometimes in broken words, sometimes in silence. Then she began showing up more often, helping with meals, organizing clothes, reading aloud from old books she brought in her backpack. When her first paycheck from the company arrived, she didn't think about new clothes or treating herself. She went straight to the market and bought bright bed sheets, soft enough to feel like comfort, and packs of sanitary pads, not because anyone told her to, but because she remembered the shame of not having them. She carried the bags herself, walked into the shelter and saw the stunned looks on the girls' faces as she laid everything out like it was Christmas. When Denzel asked her why, she looked at him with a quiet fire in her eyes, the same fire he saw that very first night. He smiled at her, not like a man in love, but like a man who finally believed in goodness again. Bella stood on the stage, beneath soft white lights, the banner behind her reading "From Pavement to Purpose" in bold purple letters. Her voice steady as she shared the story that once made her shrink with shame. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled with young women leaning forward, wide-eyed, hungry not for food but for hope. She spoke about nights without shelter, about humiliation dressed as charity, about how she nearly disappeared until someone didn't look through her
but at her. When she finished, a small girl in the second row raised her hand, her voice trembling as she asked how Bella knew the love she found was real. Bella paused, then smiled, not the practiced smile of a speaker, but the quiet, knowing smile of someone who had survived herself. She said it wasn't in the grand gestures or the gifts, but in the stillness, the space he gave her to rebuild. He never asked her to be less, never pushed her to forget where she came from.
Later that evening, she sat beside Denzel at a corner table. Their laptops open, plans scattered across the screen for a tech literacy program built just for girls like she once was. From homeless to hopeful, from invisible to impactful.
Moral lesson. This story reminds us that kindness can change a life, and true love doesn't seek to fix someone. It creates space for healing, growth, and dignity. No matter how low you've fallen, you are never too broken to rise, rebuild, and be seen.
Have you ever been judged for where you came from, only to surprise everyone with how far you've come? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? Join us for more powerful, emotional stories that inspire and uplift.